Hello there. Going to learn about Redux. Why is it important, and what benefits is Redux providing, and why you should use Redux in the. So, I would like to start my tutorial with an application. Let's say you are at the card page. Oh, okay. Let's say you are at an e-commerce page and you try add to what it will do, it will quickly add to cart. So, firstly, remove the concept about Redux. Forget about Redux. How do you think this works out? Now you have a component of this, a separate component for this, and a separate component for cart. What are you going to do? You are going to do prop drilling for it, like passing the props from one component to another till it reaches the card components, and that's really frustrating. Also, not a good choice, and also not a good programming practice. So here Redux comes in. So let me quickly add. Okay, all right, the state just changed quickly on the card component. So let me explain Redux by a diagram first. Let's say you are at your UI layer. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's explain it with the diagram with an example. It would be more beneficial. Let's first remove. All right. Okay, right now we are present at the UI screen, which is our UI layer. All right. On button click, like add to cart. Let's click on add to cart. You can see has been added to cart. Okay. So how this plays out? You just clicked on add to cart, and you possibly have an handler function like handle submit or whatever. It will dispatch the event and send it to Redux store. Now what is dispatch? Dispatch is just calling the Redux store with a certain reducer to act upon. Let's understand it more clearly. Okay, once you dispatch the function, it will call the Redux store. Now Redux store have an initial value, and when you dispatch an action, it will just specify what reducer are we going to use. So Redux will give initial state and reduce initial state and action to the reducer, and reducer will perform actions on that state and update the state of whole store. Now, one thing to note here too, each application has its own Redux store, but there is only one Redux store per applications, at per web application or what application what you are talking about, okay? And inside that Redux store, there are multiple reducers working on multiple actions. All right. So add to cart is a separate reducer, separate slice, okay? So what is reducer doing? Reducer is performing an action on the value of the card and updating the state of the Redux store. Like first the value was 0, then the value of the card was 1, and Redux store in change. Okay, initial value was 0 for Redux store. It dispatches the action to the reducer. Reducer updates the value and sends the updated value to Redux store. Redux store in response updates the value in the UI, what we are saying. All right, so that's how it plays out. Now let's code in React. Okay, code is pretty much easy. We are just gonna follow our React Redux toolkit tutorial, and that will land us where we wanna go. All right, so in the quick start, what we are gonna do is we are gonna install npm install Redux toolkit and React Redux. So first there was React Redux, but with time it gets a uh, it's began to get deprecated, and now we have Redux toolkit, which is updated version. So let's go to our application. All right. Looks like I just undid the code. Let me just npm start here. Okay, this step was done. After that, what we are gonna do, we are gonna create a store. You understand? That store, Redux store. All right. Let's create first store with reducer. Initially, there will be no reducers because we are just like building our store. We are just initiating our store at the moment. We will just write this. Okay. Reduce your store. Then what will happen? Then we will like import store from Redux store and provider from Redux. Okay. What does this imply? Provider is like subscribing. Okay. We just wrap our like say counter. Let's say this is an example of increment and decrement. Okay, so we just wrap our application inside the provider so that it gets subscribed to the provider, and the provider has a store with the value store which we just created. Let's say we create a store. uh yeah, here we just created a store. All right. So what about subscribing? Scribing like whenever counter dispatches an action, it like updates the value or whatever the changes are there in the store will be quickly re-rendered in the component which has subscribed or being wrapped up by the provider. All right. Let's say if the counter is being wrapped up by the provider, any changes in the store will affect the counter to re-render itself with the new updated values. All right. Good. Let's say okay, now we have like imported these statements and added a provider. Now let's create a Redux slice. Now what is slice? Let's go to slice. So we are having an example of increment slice. So let's say initial value is zero, all right, and name is not necessary, but let's let's be okay with it. We are passing an initial state and reducers. All right. I remember I told you there are multiple reducers for us for application. So let's say first reducer will be increment, the other one will be decrement. Like reducers are like functions which will play with the values of it. All right. And what increment is doing? Increment is taking an initial state. Initial state is in this case is zero. Okay, and add one in it. What the decrement is doing, is doing absolute opposite, minus one. Increment amount by amount is taking a certain amount and adding or subtracting it. All right, incrementing by amount. Adding by amount. All right, and then we are going to exporting these increment decrement reducers as counter slice dot actions, and also reducing counter slide dot reducer. So where now you can say that where is counter slide dot reducer? We haven't initialized it. So when we like was it recording? Yeah. So when we just use create slice of Redux Toolkit, we are going to have the properties of create slice in our counter slice. So counter slide dot reducer will probably will be the end result of the create slice. Okay. So all right, we have created our slice, and let's say what we have in store for us in the tutorial for us. Okay, so in the store now we are in condition to add a reducer. Okay, let's go to store. At first, we just have an empty array, empty object for the reducer because we just initialized our store and we didn't have any reducer to add. Okay, so now we will put a value as a key as counter and value as a counter reducer as described. All right. After that is a simple game. You can simply add a component, and we will use two hooks inside that, and you will probably not don't use these hooks in like you use state. I mean that's the hook you can use most frequent in your React journey. All right, so what does use selector does and what does use dispatch does? Use selector just gets the fetch the current value from the store, or on the current component, like what's the value in the store right now, it will fetch and update the UI around it. What does the dispatch just it just send the request, the send the action, like the send the notification, you can say, to the Redux store to update or to work on certain actions that needed to be done. Let's say in the button, let's say we are using the button here, increment, this we are dispatching to the store to increment, to use the increment reducer. Okay, to increment reducer will be used here. All right. So, and in there we are displaying our count. Count is the value we are getting from our use selector. All right. And also decrement with the dispatch and decrement reducer. Let's see if this is working for us or not. All right, we have increment, zero, and decrement. So the current value, initial value is zero, and now we are incrementing decremental. Let's say we are incrementing and it is just working fine. Decrement is also just fine. Let's say I create a new component. Let's name it component as I am short of words every time. Components.jsx. RAFC. All right, we will be using use selector here and count. Use selector will be from, okay, okay. So just remember one thing. If you have to do it without Redux, how will you do it? You will just pass a state here. Okay, it can be funny. It can be easy for two or three components. Like you can say that why should I create a store reducers if I can like do a prop drill you and send via props. But how can you manage? How can you like be easy with it when you have to create an e-commerce application or work on a big project where there can be state management between certain component, between a lot of components, and you have to change the values from one component to another. That would be a complete a mess or a hell, or you have to like propose yourself to create application on one page, and that's really not going to happen. Okay, so if you are using it without Redux, you have to pass a prop here like a count is equal to count, and then you can display it here. But using Redux, I haven't used anything. I haven't used anything from like you can say that the app to send to the component, counter to component to display it. I am just simply having a component is like you can say is component is completely independent and isolated from the counter. You have do whatever you want to do in app, do whatever wanna you do whatever value you want to change in the app.js in the counter.js, and component has nothing to do with it. Component but will simply fetch the value from the store and display it here. So I believe that would be enough for you to get started with Redux. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.